Okay, hello everyone. My name is SigFlup, and this is how to use Mega Happy Sprite. This is Mega Happy Sprite here. We have a canvas, we have a pattern selector, we have a pattern editor, we have a palette selector, a palette editor, the scroll size, sprite size, animation editor, info box, scrollers. This little button here changes it from full screen to windowed. We have a bunch of tools. We have little checks for what to see and what to draw on. We also have how to deal with new sprites, or with new patterns rather. So the first thing we want to do is draw something. That was a lot of information, and let's just start by drawing a line. First thing we do is make a palette of a color. Palette 0, index 1, make it green. We select our line drawing tool here. Draw a little box. We're currently drawing on plane A. We can just as well draw on plane B. Let me draw another little box on plane B. Let me go back to A here. This selects whether you want to draw on plane A or plane B. This is the flood fill tool. You can fill whatever you want with that tool. This is the palette sniffer tool. You can sniff whatever whatever color happens to be under your cursor. This is the pattern sniffer. You can sniff what patterns under your cursor. The canvas represents a scroll plane. It represents both scroll planes on the Sega Genesis for your information. So you can sniff whatever pattern happens to be on that particular area of the scroll plane. You can also fill a pattern. I'm going to fill this pattern with black, which fills the one pattern, but all the references to that pattern on the scroll plane happen to make that entire area black. Let's undo that. You have a pattern putter. You can put a pattern with a high priority or a low priority. You have a pattern flipper. You can flip it vertically or horizontally. You have a selection. You can grab a little area here. You can either copy or move it. I'm going to copy it, move it over here. Let me undo that. You have undo, which I've been using a lot. That's a useful tool. There's 16 undos. And finally, you have a palette selector and a priority selector. Let me describe that by making another palette here with the color blue and the same index as green. We select palette, and we can change the palette of the pattern on the scroll plane to use the palette that has blue instead of green. Let me undo that. Okay, this is only a section of the entire scroll plane. Our scroll plane happens to be 64 by 64. You can change that to whatever you want. If we change it to 32 by 32, it gets kind of mucked up a little bit. I'm going to put it back to 64 by 64. If you want to scroll and edit other parts of the scroll plane, what you want to do first is select this scroll bar. This selects whether you want a pattern, a screen scroll, a line scroll, or a pattern scroll. I'm going to select screen scroll. That's at the very bottom. You press this button, and you can select to scroll horizontally, or you can scroll vertically. I'm going to scroll horizontally. We have a little knob. This is scrolling plane A. We can just as well scroll plane B. So you can scroll it over there and edit everything else on the scroll data. And eventually that will wrap around. Okay, if we want to edit sprites, we can select sprite. Let me go down to the bottom here where we don't have any patterns already made. We can edit an 8 by 8 sprite or up to a 32 by 32 sprite. Let me zoom in here. I'm going to edit a 32 by 32 sprite. Draw a little smiley face. wonked smiley face, but a smiley face nonetheless. Okay, and if you put your cursor in here, up and down selects the next pattern. I'm sorry, the next sprite. Same thing goes for here, up and down selecting the next sprite. This is a little different than this, however. Let me show you. Let's make an animation. So this is the first frame of our animation. We select A to indicate that's our first frame. Let's go down to the next frame. You can select minus to have an overlay of the previous frame, or plus to have an overlay of the next frame. You can also press up and down on the canvas to see that. So let me try and copy the smiley face here as best we can. Oh, we copied at least an eye. That's good. Let's make the other eye kind of wonky. Have another smile. So that's the second frame of our animation. Go down to our third frame. View the previous frame. And nothing really need to know from there. Let's just make the eye kind of wonky again. Okay, and let's say that's our last frame. So we select B to close the loop. You can then bring the palette over here, your cursor over here, and press up and down to go through each frame. This line indicates that there's a mark point at the beginning of the loop or a mark point at the end of the loop. And that's how you make animations. That's pretty much everything there is to drawing. This displays the video memory. We can go down here and see that we're actually indeed inserting data into the scroll plane. This happens to be the scroll plane. You can see data's there. These colors, if the colors are on the number, that indicates what the area of memory can be. The color on the left indicates what color it is. If we click on that, we see it happens to be the area where scroll plane A is. It can be any of these things. This, however, can only be H-scroll and sprite information. The only other marker we have, again, is the ticks to indicate animation beginnings and animation endings. On the pattern editor, it's orange if the pattern happens to be on the screen. Let me go back to our screen editor here, our canvas here. It is orange if the pattern happens to be on the canvas. I'll explain clobber, stop, and clear and new right now. Clobber doesn't really have a purpose unless you'd want to draw sprites by drawing them on the canvas. What it does is it turns off finding redundant sprites and creating new sprites. So it clobbers the sprites. Turn that back off. Stop changes this to red, and that indicates that that can't be used, and the editor doesn't use that pattern for anything. Indicates that it's reserved. Clear clears all the stops. And this finds a new pattern that's unused. If a pattern is unused, it's gray. This changes the background picture. This changes the overlay picture. This is the overlay. You can have a picture overlaid as reference, and you can use that overlay to help with your drawing. You can save as a mega file, which happens to contain everything. You can save as a VRAM binary, a VSRAM binary, a CRAM binary, or a CRAM text file, which happens to be a C header file of the palettes in a structure that I use for my demos. You can also load the same things, except for the header file, of course. And that's it. I hope you get to use my sprite editor sometime. Take care, everyone.